dirt bike front wheel install pro tips coming at you right now from Elevate Action Sports. Hey, Jay Clark here with Dirt Bike TV and Elevate. Right now we're going to show you how to properly take off and put on your front wheel. Sounds simple, but a lot of guys don't tighten their front wheel correctly, and that doesn't allow the suspension to work as it should. So here we go. So first thing we do is take the front nut all the way off. Then at this point we can loosen these 4 pinch bolts on the forks. It doesn't matter which ones what order you do these to take them off. But since I'm right here, I'm just gonna take this side and then I'll go loosen the other 2. Now when you loosen these, to make your life easy, you don't have to loosen them really far. You can see as long as they move like this, there's pressures off of them, you're fine. Now we're gonna do the same thing on the other side. And this wrench I'm using is a 6-point wrench. If a T-handle can fit in here for you, you can use that as well. A good 6-point T-handle. And what is a 6-point is like this. It grips good and doesn't round off these bolts. So now at this point we get a hammer, but it's a rubber hammer. It's not metal. We don't hit metal against anything like that. Now another little tricky tip here is my wrench that I was using. I grabbed that with that round end, just put it here, just give it a little tap. It'll get a little further out. And then I can come over here. Let's probably have you switch. And then I can jiggle the wheel and I can pull the wheel out just like so. So at this point I got my wheel out, and while it's out I'm gonna grease my axle. It's always a good idea. At this point, this is a pretty new bike, so it's not very dirty, but I would clean it first. Just like to have a good thin coat, just like that, with some good grease, just like so. Now at this point, I'll set the axle right next to me where I need it. Okay, so now I'm gonna be as if I put this back on the bike. Say I had my forks off or whatever it is, then now I'm ready to go. And I like to sit down, even if I'm out in the dirt, I'll throw something down and sit down. And you can see with my foot, I can kind of help pick up the bike. And with my index finger on this side, I get my finger in between those brake pads and I am able just to hold them apart while I put them on. And a lot of times the spacers are fighting you, but if you are sitting down with your foot here like this, I'm able to kind of move it around and get to a good place. I can slide my axle in. And at this point right here, I'm gonna show you where a lot of people make mistakes. Come on in here close. This is right in here, they'll start hitting it with a hammer. Right in here, like at this point. First of all, you should never hit it with a hammer. You don't need to. If you're hitting it with a hammer, there's something wrong, it needs to be cleaned up. And so at this point right here, you wanna just keep jiggling it and find that sweet spot to where it can just fall into this lug. And now we're 3/4 of the way in. At this point right here, I'm okay with tapping it with a soft blow because we won't damage this lug because we're already in. So just a little tap there. Now I'm gonna come over here and put the nut on. So I got this good and tight. If you wanted to get a little tighter, you could tighten down one of these pinch bolts on this side. You can tighten one of those down. It'll hold the axle in place. Tighten this a little bit. Now it's good and tight. Loosen this one back. So now at this point, all 4 are loose and these forks are free floating. So now I'm gonna tighten these 2. Just remember, next to the nut, you tighten the nut, so now you tighten these 2 right here. It's pretty simple, but if you forget the order, I get lots of guys who forget, and I'm gonna show you what happens, how easy it is to mess up. So just good and snug. You can torque these to the manufacturer's spec in your manual. I have a pretty good feel for those. Okay, so those are good. This is tight, those are tight. So this bike's pretty new, so everything works pretty well still, but you see how much this fork moves? And I'll show you a drastic deal. If I put my wrench in here, see, we can move this fork way out here. We can tap it and it can go way inside as well. So it can move in here. So if we were to tighten up these 2 bolts with it in here like this, that fork is angling in and it's not gonna work right. And that's why your axle needs to be really clean, and if you hit it with a hammer, it's gonna get burrs on there and hold it. So we wanna keep it in its sweet spot. And so like I said, this bike's a 22, it's new. It's loose right now, see this loose? Which is what we want. We want it to move like this. And at this point, there's a couple different ways to center it. I'm gonna hop up here and I'll show you. So the first way is you just spin the wheel and grab the front brake. That jolting will kind of put it in space. Another thing guys do, you can do, pull it down like this, That'll kind of move it around. The other thing is you can whack it side to side like this. So any of those ways or a combination of those ways is good. And you can kind of see this bike likes to be just barely inside of that lip, and it's good to go. So, and you'll kind of know how your bike should look. So now we're at this point, we're good. And we're gonna tighten these up. So we're good and tight there. Our brake is pumped. We are done. That's all there is to it. So pretty simple deal, but it can make a world of difference if your suspension's not working well. I've been around suspension guys, and we've been at the track, and the guy's complaining his suspension isn't working well. And we've loosened up those 2 bolts on that side, and we've seen a fork just go bing, like it's bound up. So keep an eye on that. Have your front wheel on well. Check out all of our other videos here on Elevate to get more tech tips. We'll see you later. Know where you're going with the #1 GPS app, accessing 500,000 miles of trails and roads, open dates, and public lands. Plan your routes before you head out with the new state-of-the-art Route Builder. The Elite version even shows landowners and property boundaries. Download the onX Off-Road app today for a free 7-day trial. Also, to save 20%, use the discount code DBTV1.